everyone. My name is Zach Dressel, and I'm the Assistant Director and Curator at the Earl Scruggs Center located in Shelby, North Carolina. Welcome to our second part of our series on historic property research and using online tools to do that and take on projects. If you have not seen the first video in this series, I would strongly encourage you to take a trip back and watch that one, because this video is going to build off of some of the concepts we were talking about in the last video with GIS maps, and this video is going to talk about how to use those GIS maps to apply those to deed research. And so I strongly encourage you to go back and watch that video where I break down the information that can be gathered in GIS maps. But for today, we are going to be talking about deed research. So this video might be just a hair longer. I'm going to try to keep it as short as I can, but deeds are a complicated thing, and researching deeds is a very difficult job, and that's why in a lot of cases if you've ever purchased a house, you have closing attorneys that do all that for you, so you're not having to go back and trace ownership history. But when you're trying to research a historic property, you end up just doing it yourself. And what's fortunate for us is that in the times that we live in, a lot of that information is now currently available online to a point, and we will talk about that point in just a bit. So if you remember from the last video, we are tackling the property history of the Earl Scruggs home place, which was purchased by the Earl Scruggs Center in 2024. And right after we purchased that property, I set to work trying to research as much as I could about the history of how the Scruggs family came to live in that home, and the story around the selling of that home when they chose to move to Shelby, to kind of try to create a timeline of when the family was there, and give ourselves some specifics. So let's just dig straight in. If you remember from our last series, we had the GIS map pulled up. It looked exactly like this. And what I mainly am focusing on today is the deed book number and the page number. So I've got deed book 1924, and just so you guys know, I write all this stuff down in a notebook, so that way it's easier for me to reference it whenever I have to enter it in other places. But I have deed book 1924, page 1258. And what I'm going to do is head on over to the Cleveland County Register of Deeds website, and you'll enter into let me go back another step. You'll go to the search available land records page, and you'll scroll down, and you can see they kind of give you an idea of what they have on hand. This there's some really cool things in here. There's things that are not indexed, which is why it is so important that we have the deed book number and the page, is because we're going to be searching through these images, and these images go back all the way to the beginning of the county, and they go up to a certain point, and they're constantly updating this list. And there's some holes in the middle, I should say. So you'll run into places where you will try to find a deed, they don't have a digital image of it, and then you're going to have to take a trip to the Register of Deeds. But luckily, you will have the book number and the page number, which will make your trip to the Register of Deeds so much easier, because you'll just be able to walk in, find the book you're looking for, open it up to the page you need, and record your information. And what you can often do in a lot of cases is then start working yourself back from there using the Register of Deeds office. But for our purposes today, we are starting from scratch, and we're just going to see how far back we can go. And full disclosure, I know we can get back pretty far, but I can't remember off the top of my head just how far back we'll get. So you want to click into the research land records part. It will bring this up. You will click there to acknowledge the disclaimer and enter the site. I've already done that, so we're going to pull that up, and you'll get to this page. Very plain, and it doesn't look super user-friendly, and the fact of the matter is it isn't. And that is no slight on the Register of Deeds for Cleveland County. That's how almost every single one that I have used operates. They're just very kind of old school systems, and sometimes learning the language of those systems takes some time. So if you're ever trying to do deed research and you want to do it by searching last names and first names, it's possible, but it can be difficult. So it takes some patience and it takes some trial and error. And that, you need to know that when you're entering into kind of that type of project. But for us, because we already have a deed book and the page, we get to kind of skip some steps. So we're going to go to the View Images tab. We're going to use the Real Property Books, and we're just going to literally type in that book number, so book 1924, and that page number, page 1258, and we're going to click forward, and there you are. We have the deed from when Earl Scruggs Center purchased the property from the Anthony family. We aren't necessarily interested in a lot of the information on this page. We are interested to the document references in certain cases. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to head on down to this page, and this is important to see. So this shows us our survey. This shows us some other information, but what it also shows us is our next step in our journey of doing this deed research, and that is the title reference, which is going to be in 1178-2394. Okay, so we'll head that way. So you're going to search book 1178, page 2394. And if you notice, our book numbers are getting lower, which is exciting. We went from book 1924 to book 1178, so we're getting lower in the numbers, which means that we are getting older, hopefully. We'll see. But let's go ahead and click on that and see where it takes us. Oh, yeah. So now we are in 1996, and this was when the land was titled over. And now we're going to start getting some information that's actually a little more useful. So let's take a look at what we got here. We've got, it says here, being lot number 9 of the D. Scruggs, that's David Scruggs, Earl's grandfather, land, as allotted and assigned to the heirs of G.E. Scruggs, George Elam Scruggs, Earl's father, and described by a line that follows. And then it will give us all of the information for that. And then it says, accepted from the above property are any and all conveyances by Charlie Hoover Anthony Hoover Sr. and wife Gretel M. Anthony. That's not necessarily important for our purposes, but there you go. So now what we are hoping for you can see here it says the property here and above described was acquired by grantor by instrument recorded in book 5I. And if you have trouble seeing that, we can actually zoom in and really get a good look at it. 5I, page 14. Or sorry, 417. Okay, so now we are going to really get ahead, because now we're learning when did the Anthonys purchase this property? This is the deed from when the Anthony family purchased the property, the family that the Earl Scruggs Center purchased it from. And I should say, we are in a very fortunate position with researching this property that there were very few owners over the course of the last several years. You will get into some cases where, you can bounce, boom, boom, boom. I've done deeds before where you go through a dozen deeds before you even get to 1950. That's totally possible. But you're hoping that it's as easy as this. It is not always as easy as this. They will not always tell you your prior deed. Sometimes they won't mention it at all, and then it's on you to go track that down, which becomes a whole process, and one that we're not going to go through today, because essentially what it means is you're going to have to go back, figure out what year you think it was bought or sold, and then look through the deeds of that given year, using the deed books that have been digitized. So, but for our purposes, we get to kind of cheat ahead again. So we're going to put in 5I and page 417, and we're going to hope that I wrote that in right. Boom. All right. So let's see what we get here. We're going back in time. So now we have a deed from 1944 between J.R. Anthony and Maggie Anthony, selling to C.H. Anthony. So we're all the way back to 1944. We know that we are closing in on when the Scruggs family lived there, so we know we're getting close. And yet again, it says, being lot number 9 of the D. Scruggs land as allotted and assigned to the heirs of G.E. Scruggs and described by a line that follows. It is always important when you are doing this deed research that you check and make sure that you are still on the right deed. There are so many books, or you're still on the right property. There are so many books and there are so many pages, and if you so much as mess up one number in that sequence, you could end up on an entirely different deed, or an entirely different property, and not realize it, especially once you get into the older ones where it gets a little less clear. So in our case, this is the correct deed. We know it's still that lot number 9, and we'll explain why they keep saying lot number 9 later. And we still see that it's the heirs of G.E. Scruggs, which would have been Earl and his brothers and sisters. And if we were to go through all these property information, we would see that. We know that there was 39 acres. So again, that land was broken up over time, and we're down to 3/4 of an acre now that the Earl Scruggs Center currently owns. As I mentioned earlier, it is possible to hit a bit of a stopping point when you're doing this deed research. I think I had literally just mentioned that sometimes they don't record the prior deed whenever they're doing this. And right now, we're looking at a situation where that is the case. So we got back to 1944, we got back to J.R. Anthony and Maggie Anthony, and then guess what? We hit a wall, right? So at this point, what you would need to do is do some serious thinking about when might that last sale have occurred. And thankfully, in our case, we know that Earl moved out in the early 1940s, and we had thought it was around 1942, 43, and so it was right around this time. So what I was able to do is do it the hard way, which is to say, you go back, you go to a specific deed book, then you're going page by page, and you're just looking and looking and looking. And it takes time, and I wish I could say that it was easier than that, but at this current point, the last name index starts at 1945, I believe, And so we're dealing with pre-1945, so you have to kind of do it the old-fashioned way. Now, fortunately for us, I've already done that. So what we're going to do is we're going to cheat a little, and we are going to go to right here, where we see that uh, Ruby, um, George Blanton and wife, which would have been Ruby Blanton, Horace Scruggs, Earl Scruggs, miners by their guardian, Union Trust Company, um, guardian of Horace and Earl Scruggs, miners of the county, yada yada. This is in 42. So we'll see that this is where they sold to J.R. Anthony. And we know it's the same because, again, we see lot number 9 of the D. Scruggs land to the heirs of G.E. Scruggs. So voila, we have found here is when the Scruggs family sold the property to J.R. Anthony, and that date was April 18th, 1942. At least that's when the deed was, made out. Now, that can always be a moving target, especially in older days, when deeds would be recorded as much as months after the sale of a property. But we're going to take them on their word on this for now. Here's page 2, and you can see we've got everybody who signed in on that. And here you can see Earl Scruggs and their guardian, which was the Union Trust Company of Shelby. That's how it was deeded out. We'll talk about that in a second. And then we have down here where everybody showed up basically to sign their part of the closing documents. So there you go. We got back to where Earl and his family sold the property in 1942. Now let's talk about when did they receive the property. And so fortunately for us, I also went back and dug that up, and we have found that here in 1934. So this is a document from February of 1934 where they essentially split David Scruggs, Earl's grandfather's land after his death. There was it says right here, 167.66 acres. And they split it amongst all of his living heirs, of which you can see this list. There were several. And so now we're getting into talking about, okay, what is the deal with lot number 9? Well, when they split that, they split it into multiple lots. And right here you can see your first lot, second lot, and this would go to various family members. Third, fourth, we're looking for number 9, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and I missed it. 9th, sorry. And right here you can say, we allot and assign lot number 9 to the heirs of G.E. Scruggs deceased, to wit, Junie, Eula May, Ruby, Horace, and Earl, to be held by them as tenants in common in equal shares, said lot defined as follows. And then it goes about that lot. Now, what's interesting about this is it says, we find that the said dividend is more valuable by $97.37, and we assess the holders of said lot number 9 with the sum of $97.37 to be paid to Fanny Green's heirs, the holder of lot number 10, to equalize the said dividend. So basically what they're trying to do is essentially the Scruggs family got land that was more valuable than the Greens, and so in order to make that right, they had to pay a little extra cash on top in order to secure their inheritance. Now, it should be said that this land was deeded to the children of George Elam Scruggs, but not to his wife, Lula, which is not uncommon at this time period, because it was, you know, their grandfather's land. It would be different if Earl's father, George, had outlived his grandfather. It would have looked a little different. But because it was the other way around, it kind of skipped Lula and went straight to the kids. Now, they all lived there. That isn't to say that Lula didn't live with them, but that is the case. So right there, and this is just more of the same information. So as you can see there, we've done an intense deep dive into what deed research can look like. And sometimes it's as easy as you follow that rabbit trail, kind of like we were doing at the beginning, where we were going through number by number, following the rabbit trail. And sometimes it can be really difficult, like what we ended up with, where that trail ended and we were kind of stuck having to figure it out after that point. Now, just for the fun of it, here at the end of the video, let's take a look just so you guys can see how this works. Let's take a quick look at two other things. For one, I want to show you guys what some of the earliest deeds would have looked like in Cleveland County. So here is Book A, first page. This is the first deed recorded in Cleveland County. You can see here it has a date of March of 1841. Obviously, Cleveland County was not founded until 1841, so that is when their deed book starts. But it also has a date here of 1840. That means that the purchase of the property could have happened in 1840, but it wasn't recorded in the deed book until 41. As I said earlier, the older the deeds, they sometimes slip because it's a much more drawn-out process in the olden days than it is today to purchase a property. So this is what some of those older deeds looked like, and you can go and play around in here if you want to. I've done it before and just kind of look at what's interesting. But another thing that's really cool to look at is these plat maps. So we're gonna go plat maps, and we're gonna start. I just want to show you guys what these kind of look like, if it will do it. All right. One thing that's really cool to look at is these plat maps. So let's look at this. This is the very first plat, I guess. Actually, I'm going to download it because it'll look better. Here we have a plat of Patterson Springs Hotel, which is really cool. We until I came across this, I really had no idea what that property actually looked like. So we can kind of dig in here and see right here we have the hotel and a barn, and then they had created some lots, it looks like, for housing. And this map was dated 1912. So towards the very end of the lifespan of Patterson Springs, it would be pretty much closed. Well, sorry, this is 1911. There's a bunch of dates on this. It would have pretty much been closed by, in another 5 years. So this is towards the end of the lifespan of that hotel. But it's cool to see what this property looked like. And then obviously this is kind of upside down because it's saying here that to go to Shelby, you go that way. So if we wanted to look at it in the scheme of a larger map, we would need to flip that around to get us going north. And now we're looking at it north. So this is what it actually would have kind of been laid out as, going straight up to Shelby. there was a public road that would take you down here, and then you would have had there's also to Shelby there, so who knows. But anyways, so it's kind of cool to be able to dig through these things. We can even go dig in a little more if we want to, and let's see what page 2 looks like. I don't know. And so what you'll find is that there's just all these little. This is a map of the W.B. Turner lands from 1912, and so there's all these fun little things. And now this is not a perfect document of every single plat in the system. There are some that I think are missing, and that, you know, that could be for any number of reasons. But it's kind of fun to get to go in there and play on that. So I hope that this video was helpful in at least getting you started in the right direction of doing deed research, giving you an idea of how the systems work. That way, maybe it doesn't seem so daunting if you wanted to take on your own research project. Thank you guys so much for sitting in. And in the next video, we are going to cover historic maps and how to use historic maps to figure out some history on buildings.